So what would make this an especially useful conversation for you today?
Mainly talking about my timeline. I'm a sophomore right now, so I have a lot of time on my hands. I'm not really sure where to start, or if it's even worth me getting into studying for the LSAT. And also, should I be studying for this, like I'm saying for the SAT, where I can take it once, like next year, and then retake it again my senior year? So that's kind of where I am right now. Not really sure what I should be doing.
Sure. Yeah. So you absolutely can retake the LSAT. You can take it multiple times. You can take it 3 times in one admission cycle. So retaking is normal.
Okay.
Unlike the SAT, law schools will see all LSAT scores on your record. So there's no score choice on the LSAT. But the good news is that law schools do not average multiple LSAT scores. They only take the highest score. So there's not really much of a downside to retaking. If you took it like 5 or 6 times, that might start to look a little bit flaky, but 3 times, totally normal, totally fine. Now, you said you're a sophomore now, so you have plenty of time to study for the LSAT. You don't even need to necessarily be thinking about it now, but typically, the longer you study for it, the closer you get to reaching your fullest potential.
Okay. The normal timeline's like 6 months, isn't it?
I wouldn't say that's normal, but that is good. Most people study far too little for this, investing only maybe 2 months or 3 months, but it typically takes at least 5 to 6 months to reach your fullest potential. And I have encountered a lot of students who study over the course of a year and do end up getting top scores. It's a question of commitment, putting in the time. And then, of course, there's nearly 100 released LSAT exams. And so if you studied even just half of those, you would be better prepared than most test takers, and you would have seen virtually everything under the sun.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, that's really all I was curious about, is what I should, how, like, does it matter if I start now? So it sounds like it wouldn't hurt to start now, but I don't need to. So I guess my next thing was, I took like one of the practice ones, and I felt like a waste of time because I didn't really know. I was really just guessing on it all. So I was like, this is kind of dumb. So I took it, felt comfortable in some areas, really uncomfortable in some others. So where should I be really focusing my time if I was like just wanting to just dive into it and just get more curious? Not necessarily like really study for it, but just kind of get to know the LSAT, get to know how it's different from any other tests I've been taking and things like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. Well, if you just want to dip your feet in the water, I mean, do another practice test or 2 and review it and look up explanations for it, or think through it yourself, or study with a friend, just to see not only what you're having trouble with, but why are you having trouble with it, and why is the right answer right? Why is the wrong answer wrong? And why was the wrong answer tempting to you? Why was the right answer discouraging? And so, I mean, there's nearly 100 exams. So if you look at a couple of them, that's not really going to hurt anything. I just wouldn't make them the most recent exams, because you'll probably want to save those for closer to your actual LSAT.
That makes sense. Okay. And then is there, I guess 2 questions. One, is there recommended practice tests that you would say, would you steer clear of like the bigger LSAT books and stuff like that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. So there are nearly 100 released LSATs, like I said. Most of them are published in books of 10 exams for around $20 each. So that's what you want to get. They're all numbered, and higher numbers are more recent. So right now we're in the high 80s. We're going to be, by the time you take it, you'll be like the 90s, prep test numbered in the 90s. So you don't want to study from the oldest exams that in like the single digits, because those are from the early 90s. I would only do those if you were studying over the course of like a year or more. So for you, I'd say probably, if you're not starting now, then when you're actually going to get started, get everything from exam 50 and up. That'd be fine. Okay. But you can't go wrong with any official administered LSAT exams. I would steer clear from certain books, especially those that do not use real LSAT questions. A lot of those are unrealistic and contain mistakes. So like LSAT for Dummies, for example, is one I would not use. Any book that is actually licensing real LSAT questions will tell you so on the cover, because they're paying a big licensing fee to the test makers to do so. And you also want to make sure that the exam they're including is actually a recent exam as well. I've seen some companies say, we include one real LSAT, but that LSAT is from 1995. So technically true, but it's a little bit misleading because it's not as useful as you might think. The exam has evolved over time, so more recent is more relevant. But most of the prep companies now are using real official LSAT exam. That's what you want.
Okay, perfect. So just official LSAT there. Okay. And then is it administered year round, or is there kind of like a time that they typically do it? Like, is it like a season or anything like that? Or is it just kind of year round?
It's year round. It used to be only 4 times a year. Now it's like 10 times a year. So nearly every month has an LSAT administration for it. And it doesn't really matter which one you do. They're all the same. They're all equated. Not like February is harder than September or something like that. It's all the same. And your score is good for 5 years. So you said you're a sophomore now. You could take it in March of junior year, a little over a year from now. Then you could retake it in the summer if you wanted to, and then apply in the fall of senior year. That's what a lot of people do, ideally.
Okay, then I will definitely go ahead and do that. All right, that's all the questions I had, really. That's really it. Just not wanting to know where to get started. So it just sounds like continuing to retake them, or continuing to take those a little earlier tests and just figure out what's comfortable, what's not, and then really getting to studying maybe next year. Yeah.
Excellent. Great. Yeah. The one thing I would add for you is that the LSAT is incredibly important, but you can focus on your GPA for now. It's early enough in your timeline that that's totally fine. You don't even need to touch the LSAT now, but also consider that the LSAT typically weighs more heavily in the admission process than your GPA does, because it's a more objective, standardized measure for law school. So it's worth investing the time significantly more so in the LSAT. Like treating the LSAT like a 6-credit class is a good recommendation, but it doesn't even do it justice because it's weighs more than your entire undergraduate GPA put together. You want all your numbers to be high, of course, but the LSAT is worth that extra attention.
Okay. And then speaking about admissions, right now I'm a political science. I'm not sure if this is like your realm to answer, but right now I'm a political science major and I really want to change to art studio, which has nothing to do with law. How do you think that would like kind of deter law schools from looking at me? Do they care about majors anymore? I've been hearing that they care less and less about them.
Yeah, they don't really care much about your major. You can technically major in anything and go to law school. I do wonder how they would consider art studio. I don't know how academic in nature that is versus like more project based. So I don't know how well they would be able to evaluate your grades or transcript or evaluations. So my guess is that you would want to do something to show them that you do have, you know, the critical reasoning and reading and writing abilities that are more relevant to law than art is. And they might pay more attention to your LSAT score because, again, it's an objective measure that can show those skills.
I do go a little more liberal art school, so there's a lot more classes that I would be taking that are outside the actual art studio major, but that I've never thought about, like, it's more project based. They're not going to really know how I perform like in a classroom setting, but at the school I go to, they'll definitely be able to know. Okay, that's really all I have then.
Great. Well, I'm really glad we connected. What would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today?
That I don't actually need to buy all the big books just yet and dive into it, that I can take my time on it and just continue to do some baby steps and start to take some of the older tests. You gave me a good starting point, which was those 50 tests there and higher. That was really good.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, please keep in touch and let me know if you need anything as you move forward.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.